yeah, the company's successful and yeah, I made money on it, but is that success? No. Success is getting a chance to do the things that you enjoy and you're good at.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Over the Wall. I'm here today with Marc Randolph, one of the co-founders of Netflix. Amazing entrepreneur. He has a book out, obviously, you can see on his shoulder there.
Oh,
That will
what,
never work.
this? Oh, I didn't even know that was there.
but it's an awesome book. I've read it, and it really gives like the birth of what happened at Netflix. And then he's also got a podcast called That Will Never Work, which is, I think, really quite interesting. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to jump into that in a second. But a really amazing person. Once again, as you know, we try to have real entrepreneurs or people who have really lived this purpose in life. And I'm just so happy to have you here, Marc. And thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure to be with you.
First, probably if people haven't read the book, it turns out Sigmund Freud is Uncle Siggy, right?
Yeah, he's a family member.
And it seemed to play somewhere in the consciousness. And then I guess there's another family member who was a big into the marketing side of things too. And they were like one of the main people on, not saying manipulation marketing, but like things around the brain. You had these like yin and yang of marketers or people understanding. I mean, I just wanted to ask you, wrote in the book, I mean, what did it impact? You didn't say what impact has, but did it have an impact in your life?
Well, who knows? But we're talking genetics, and if there was any, it was certainly nature, not nurture, because obviously Sigmund Freud was gone long before I came along. And Edward Bernays, who is the other marketer you're talking about, who in some ways is much, much closer to what I do or what I did. I didn't have any real day-to-day. It wasn't like, Sigmund Freud took me aside and goes, Marc, this internet thing, it is going to be huge. So, but there must have been something there, because there was this sense that persuasion is something which is legitimate, that how you make people feel and how they think about something is not BS, that it's not entirely what's the product. And certainly, coming of age in Silicon Valley, as I did, there is always that tension between this belief that everything is the product. And that's not necessarily true.
And so I always like to start with people's family, because obviously it has some basis for obviously where we start. But your dad wasn't an entrepreneur, which was interesting, right? He worked for Wall Street, and but somehow you caught the bug. I was trying to connect the dots. I couldn't. So how did you connect? How did that happen?
I haven't the slightest idea. He was the anti-entrepreneur, if anything. He was a Wall Street guy. In fact, he was not even just a Wall Street person, but the firm he worked for were famous for being value investors, meaning he completely wouldn't have understood the crazy world of growth stocks, and certainly the speculative frenzy that took place right when I was doing Netflix. But in some ways, I think he dreamed of entrepreneurship. I think he realized that what he was doing was non-fulfilling. And it wasn't for him. He'd come home from work burned out and unhappy. And even more importantly, in terms of an influence on me, I grew up, I was extremely fortunate, not only in the country I grew up in, but, the affluence, general affluence I had growing up. So I had a huge amount of advantages. But so my dad was pretty successful, but he was managing the money for people who were super successful. And I think it kind of made him feel that he hadn't accomplished something. And he used to say, that he goes, Marc, if you really want to be successful, you have to do your own thing. Because he saw all the people who he was managing money for, who were all, extraordinarily wealthy. It all came from having their own companies. And he would come home sometimes saying that to me. And I think perhaps that imprinted on me, not that I should be an entrepreneur, but that being an entrepreneur was okay. That doing this crazy, irrational thing, of starting from nothing with an idea that everyone says will never work, and having that be a fulfilling life's occupation was actually reasonable.
Yeah.
So if there was any influence from that, I think it came from him. The bigger thing I think he gave to me was the same uh, cultural affirmation that risk taking was okay. I
Hmm.
mean, not necessarily in the way that I ended up taking risks in the valley, but I'm a big outdoors person, and he was a big outdoors person. He was a climber, and he really gave
Hmm.
to me this love for the mountains. But also, it was the kind of thing where I'd come home one day and go, I think I'm going to go caving this weekend with the outing club. And whereas I would imagine that most families, most parents would go, "You're out of your mind. You're going to get killed. You'll get stuck down there. It's dirt." He would go, "Oh, that sounds fantastic." Or I wanted to learn how to rappel. That where you slide down a rope
Yeah.
backwards on a cliff. And I found a book, and I told my dad I want to learn how to rappel. And rather than saying, "You're going to break your arm, what are you out of your mind?" He goes, "Well, I think we have some rope in the garage." So it was always, every time there was a fork in the road and there was a riskier fork and a less risky fork, he would always be the one who would encourage me, "Well, take the shot at it." And I
Hmm.
think those things are what really had an influence on me growing up.
It's so there's some markers there. It's interesting. So your dad, he pushed you, it seemed like. I guess it's interesting. He didn't hold you back and tell you, get a 9 to 5 job, live my life. He
Correct.
saw that the successful people in the world were entrepreneurs. I get
I
those
think
are clients,
he
right?
supported me is a better, I think supported me is a better way to do it. But there's one more, since we're talking about parents, I'm going for a long
Yeah.
about how, because you never really know,
Yeah.
because you're just kind of you're looking backwards and trying to analyze where does some of this stuff come from. But I think one of the healthier things that came out of how I grew up was, as I mentioned before, I grew up in a very affluent community, and a lot of my parents' friends were super successful. Some of them were running big Fortune 50 companies. Um, and so many of them were miserable. So many of them were not married to their first wife. They weren't talking to their kids. Um, I mean, it was a soap opera. And what that did was it broke that imprint that says that being rich or being wealthy equates to happiness in some way. So
Right.
I never, despite the overwhelming images that we get from advertising, from the work of Edward Bernays,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
I was gonna say, yeah.
that says, no, if you have this, if you have money, you'll be happy. If only you can buy the X, you'll be happy. That cycle didn't imprint on me. And I think it was because I grew up seeing people who had X and were very distinctly not happy. And I think that's had a bigger shape on the trajectory of my life than almost anything, because I became an entrepreneur for what I'm going to say are the right reasons.
Yeah.
Not because I thought I'd make money at it, not because, holy, who would have ever thought I'd actually be on a show or a podcast?
Yeah.
You know, never. I did it because I purely liked solving these interesting problems, and because of that, I found tremendous fulfillment and gratification in that career.
I want to hit on something. I think you what you captured in the book, and it's there's such an important part of creativity that you captured. I really want to spend time with it, which is like this idea that most people who start out as entrepreneurs think you have this epiphany, and then the one product idea comes and you're off to the races, and then you're, next thing you know, you're Steve Jobs, or you're building Netflix. And I really want to talk about that because you spend a lot of time there, and let's talk through that because you're an idea person. That's clearly, like, it sounds like you and Reed, when you were sharing car, you like throw idea by, I got an idea for this, and shampoo, and the whole thing you got. So let's talk through, like, where I want to start something a little bit more esoteric. Where do you think the ideas for products, and where does this come from? I've asked this question before, Chopra, and where do you think this all comes from? How does it manifest in your brain?
Oh, for me,
Just say you, and you think in general. That may be an abstract to something more general. But where does an idea come from?
uh, so so first of all, I love the fact that you're touching on the epiphany moment, because it's such a perfect follow-on from what I just talked about, which is
Yeah.
people having these misconceptions about what an entrepreneur is or what an entrepreneur does, or misconceptions about where some of the popular companies that they see every day started. And there is that and listen, I'm not begrudging it. People love epiphany moments. It's a wonderful fantasy. And the world is full of them. Like, going even back, you have gravity. Oh, it's because an apple fell onto Newton.
Yeah,
And
right.
then boom, there's the whole theory of gravity. Or
Gravity, right.
Archimedes in his bathtub, and the original Eureka moment. But
Right.
there's also these other great myths. There's the one about eBay is from selling Pez dispensers, or Airbnb coming because they couldn't make the rent. So let's put an air mattress, or Uber. I can't get a cab on New Year's Eve, or even Netflix. A late fee on a movie, and
$40 late
boom,
fee. Yeah,
all of a sudden
exactly.
we're negotiating the rights to Orange is the New Black.
Right.
No, it's the thing is, what I think drives an entrepreneur, and listen, Rob, your experience is probably different than mine, but maybe it's the same, is that you see the world as this imperfect place, that when you bump into some inconvenience, rather than going, God, why do my earbuds always come out of my pocket in this tangled mess, and just complain, they something switches in their head, and they go, gosh, I wonder if there's some better way to do this. And that's where ideas come from, is that once you've trained yourself to see the world as an imperfect place, whether you're born with it or trained yourself, and I actually believe you can train yourself to do it, that once you see that flaws, you see them every place, and then you can help yourself. It's like, walking down the street and seeing a box full of puppies. You can't just go, oh, look, puppies, and keep walking. You go, wait, whose puppies are these? Someone's got to take care of these. Hey, how are we going to fix this? And that's where ideas come from. And they come springing into your head. You can no better keep them out than you could stop breathing. And there's a big, big, big distinction in the second big piece, which we can talk about later, which is that for a lot of people, yes, ideas spring in their head, but then of course they stay in their head. And so the second big defining characteristic of the entrepreneur is not just that they can have all these ideas,
Right.
but that they actually do something about
So
it.
let's talk about, because you said something that I guess I didn't pick up in the book as much, but you said you can train yourself. I want to dig in. So tell me, you can train yourself to see these gaps in the world. But
Rob, you're feeding me these perfect opportunities, because really the reason I wrote the book was exactly both of those things. Was one, to dispel the myth of the epiphany moment,
right.
that Netflix was this walk in the park. What a genius Marc and Reed were, that they had this idea that boom, but no, everyone said it would never work, and they were right. And it was this long, brutal struggle, and you want to show people that. But the other thing is, one of the things that I learned from my time as an entrepreneur, and more importantly, from the years that went by after I left Netflix until I wrote the book, was realizing that there are, in fact, these broadly applicable, I won't call them rules, but tips and tricks and approaches that can allow anybody who has some idea, some dream, and they want to make it real. It doesn't need to be an entrepreneurial one.
Right.
Everyone who's taken a shower, as they say, has had an idea. And there's an approach that we've kind of gotten really good at in the entrepreneurial community, of saying, what is the process of taking an idea and going through the validation phase and all those things. But I believe that it is possible for anyone to train themselves to learn those things and make their own things come true. You don't need to start, but you can have any dream. You go, I want a better job. I want to get a better apartment. I want to live in this part of the world or work in this field. Those are all dreams. And the way you would go about doing them are exactly the same way that you or I would say, wow, there's a big opportunity to change the way something's being done now, which is not working well. But we'd start in the same place. We'd start with an idea, and then off you go.
There's a debate I've had on this show with people, and it's I wouldn't say it's 50-50, but I'll ask you the question, which is that some people have said entrepreneurs are born, and some people say that anyone can be an entrepreneur. So where do you fall out on on the
Uh,
philosophy
I
there.
think it's a false dichotomy here that it's some combination of the two. Uh, there are some, but the important. So yes, some people naturally have a talent for certain of the aspects that are important to being in entrepreneurship. We could talk forever about what those are, and I'll I'll put myself in the category that some of these things came naturally to me. But I did Netflix when I was 38. So, and I had spent years. It was my sixth company.
Yeah.
So it isn't like I taught myself a ton. I learned a lot from trial and error. So to think that if you had picked me off the street and I couldn't, when I was 18 or 19, could I have done Netflix? Never, never in a million years. You do learn things and you accumulate knowledge. And I think what's wonderful now is that there are lots of people, and I'll put you in that category, who are saying, let's help people understand that there are things that you can do differently, that you can learn how to do, their approaches. But I'll go off in a third direction since that's my nature. I never take the A choice or the B choice. I go, but maybe there's a C choice.
That's good.
The C choice is that, yes, you can learn these things, but you learn them by doing them.
By doing it, you have to get out of your head and do it. That's basically what they're.
It's like saying, is a great golfer born or made?
Yeah.
Well, both. Nobody gets up and wins the Masters having never taken a golf lesson and never having a coach and never working on their mechanics and never hitting 16 million golf balls. Some of them have natural, talent, strength, whatever. But it's same with entrepreneurship. You learn these things by practicing.
But when it takes, I had the Ryan from $1 Million Listing, Ryan Serhan, on here, and he fascinating guy. Like, actually, you learn from everybody. Actually, one of the things I love about the show is I learn. You can never stop learning, even if you built a company and it's a certain size. But he said so I asked him a question. He said, I just do the work. I got to get out. If you sit in your head too long, because he just started his own company, he left where he was. Now he's on his own. In the middle of the pandemic, he did it. And he said, you just train yourself to do the work and get out of your head with an idea. And so I think it's kind of what you feel too, right? Get it out. But that's a high hurdle because usually people have to trade something in their life. It's not like sometimes you're broke in this, you don't have maybe a job. A lot of times you have things, a family, a job. How do you make the step? How do you take that? That's first step is massive. And what have you trained yourself to do?
Okay, well, let's talk about lessons. And I can in some ways, it's why I wrote the book. It's explicitly why I'm doing the podcast, is because it's really easy for people like myself to get on a show like this and say something like, the trick is to get ideas out of your head is to figure out a quick, cheap, and easy way to try them. And the cheaper, easier, quicker it is, the more you can do. And success is proportionate to how many ideas you try. So, but that's easy to say. And if you want, we can take that and put that in a really nice Instagram quote tile and you'll get all kinds of likes. But of course, if you're really struggling with an idea, you're going, what the hell does that mean? I want to know, how do I do that? How do I take this idea and quickly and easily and cheaply collide it with reality? And there is an approach, I believe, and it really is kind of deconstructing your idea and trying to say, to start, which aspects of my idea are truly unique. And would we have time if I give a quick example?
No, we have time. This is what I want, as deep as you can go on this, because this area is just where I think the book's amazing on this. And that I just want to go deep with you on that, because the first step is so hard for most people.
I'll give a quick example. And this is a woman that I worked with 2 or 3 years ago, maybe more than that, 4 or 5 years ago, because I do a lot of work with college age entrepreneurs. And so she gets her moment to sit down with me and goes, I have this great idea. I want to do peer-to-peer clothing sharing. I want to have this app and this company where basically everyone can see what's in my closet. I can see what's in their closet. I can borrow their blouse. They can borrow my skirt, whatever it is. And I go, great. What do you want to talk about? She goes, well, I'm struggling, which is, how am I going to raise the money to build the app? How do I find a technical co-founder? Should I drop out of school to do this? And it's like, whoa, 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 slow down here. I go, how long have you been thinking about this? And she goes, oh, I've been dreaming about this for about a year. And I goes, but I can't figure out how to start because how do I raise the money? Blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, let's figure out how you can quickly, and cheaply, and easily collide your idea with reality. Do you have a piece of paper? She goes, yes, of course. I'm a college student. I go, great. Do you have a magic marker? Do you have a Sharpie? She goes, yeah, I have a Sharpie. And I go, I want you to write in the paper the following. Want to borrow my clothes? Knock. And I want you to tape it to the outside of your dorm room door this afternoon. And we are going to find out this evening whether your idea has any validity. Because if you go a day or two and no one knocks, well, you've learned something very interesting right there. But let's assume that something even better happens and some people begin knocking. Fantastic. You've learned. Now you're going to learn the next step. You're going to let them in and they're going to go through your stuff and you're going to learn about fit and you're going to learn about personal style and taste. And let's say they find something they like. Fantastic. This is working. Now you're going to learn something else. You're going to learn how you feel when your favorite blouse comes back with a stain on it or torn. Or you're going to learn that, wow, I have to charge more than I thought because everything has to go through dry cleaning. And you're going to learn all of that with a piece of paper, a magic marker, and some tape. Because the question here is, can I build an app? Of course you can build an app. People are building apps all the time. You don't need to prove you can build an app. Do you have to prove that you can get a technical help? No. The question is, the question is, do people really care about this idea? And more importantly, what are the intricacies of this that you never thought of? And you only are going to learn those things once you collide the idea with reality. And so this hack was, what's a quick, cheap, and easy way to do it? And for her, it was, I don't need to build an app. I do not need a repeatable, scalable model. I need a non-repeatable, non-scalable model. And I go, let's say this works and you're working on this for 6 months and all of a sudden you're exchanging hundreds and hundreds of pieces of clothing every week. And you're doing it all with this 3x5 card system, and you have stuff on yellow pads, and you're texting people and going, "Where is this?" And, "Oh yeah, I'll check and see if I have this size." And you're going out of your mind, and you're working night and day. That's fantastic, because now, 6 months from now, when you go, I need to raise money, rather than going and pitching someone and saying, "Imagine if you will," you go, look at what's going on here. Look at I can tell you what my average order size is. I can tell you what my repeat rate. I can tell you my churn. I can tell you my acquisition cost, because I'm doing it. I can't make it any bigger. It's all happening in 2 buildings on 1 campus for women's clothing only, because going out of my mind. And then you'll go to someone who is an engineering major, and rather than saying, "Hey, would you build this crazy idea I have?" Which I can tell you never works. The last thing an engineering student wants to do is build someone else's idea.
Right.
But what'll happen is you'll say, "Let me show you what I'm doing." And you'll walk them through the processes and the systems, the 3x5 cards, the yellow pads, the text threads. And I swear to God, she or he, whoever the student is, will go, "Oh, we could do this so much better. It would be so cool. I could build and then they're in. And all those things only happen once you collide the idea with reality. But one more thing, since you let me go.
So
deep
collide
here.
the idea. It's a very powerful statement. Collide the idea with reality as quick as you can. And don't overthink it. Right. Go ahead.
Right. But here's the thing is I just walked you down the path of everything working. That's not going to happen.
Right.
All ideas are bad ideas. What's going to happen is, maybe someone will knock, but they'll be in your room, and now I'm making this up, but they'll be in the room and they'll be in the closet and they'll go, nothing I like here. So they go, "Oh, what's that?" "Oh, that's an old, that's my whatever." He goes, "Can I borrow that?" Not even clothing. And all of a sudden that works. Or something else crazy goes on, but you would never have discovered those secondary effects if you hadn't started with the primary one. And That's this big revelation. That's part of the whole epiphany thing, is that everyone is falling in love with ideas, and you should never fall in love with your idea, because your idea is going to cheat on you. It's going to abandon you. It's going to be a one-night stand. Do not fall in love with the idea. Fall in love with the problem. The problem that's the loyal one. That problem will be with you through thick and thin. And the more you get to know that problem, the more interesting and nuanced it is. But your problems, your idea, I'll tell you right now, if you have an idea, tell me, oh yeah, it's wrong. I know it's wrong. I can hear that it's wrong. Your job is to figure out why it's wrong. Your idea is to figure out, why doesn't that work? And then abandon it and go on to the next one. There is no such thing as a good idea, despite what you have heard in brainstorming sessions where everyone goes, there's no such thing as a bad idea. Well, bullshit. They're all bad ideas.
I love this, by the way. I love this thinking. Like, I don't know if people know, it's so counterintuitive. Like no idea is a good, no such thing as, there's no such thing as a good idea. It's like not what we've heard. Like, it's like the stories you heard. Steve Jobs thinks and up pops the Mac. It's like, you guys, the return was too expensive and my late fees. And it's just really, I just think when you hit on this thing, and I often tell entrepreneurs, like, make a list of things you want to do and just pick one and go. And it doesn't matter. Like, just go. Because once you're pregnant as an entrepreneur, you're pregnant. Like, you got to go all the way to getting something out the door, to birth something. That's kind of how, I guess that's what you think about too, right? Just
absolutely
go for it.
It's that's the defining characteristics, that predisposition to action. Which is that, I mean, listen, the classic story is, ideas, Reed Hastings and I, my co-founder at Netflix, current CEO of Netflix, we're both, going to be out of jobs. We were commuting to a job which we knew both were going away, brainstorming ideas for this company that I wanted to start. I mean, he was going to be the angel investor. I was going to start the company, but we needed the idea, and we were brainstorming ideas. And you briefly touched on it, at the beginning of our conversation. We had crazy ideas, shampoo, like personalized shampoo,
I remember that,
custom dog food, computer-driven milling machine made baseball bats, and then this even crazier idea: video rental by mail. Equally stupid, but it's okay, interesting. But also didn't work, because it was that was VHS cassette back in 1997, which is when this was. And so the thing that broke it open was when we heard about the DVD. But then here is the thing. So we're in the car. Reed goes, yeah, I've been reading. I just read about this technology called the DVD. And I wonder if this little thin, it's light, size of a music CD. I wonder if that might re-energize that idea we kicked around a few months ago about doing video rental by mail. Now there's the moment, which is we're not going to, this is so cool. Imagine how amazing this will be. Just dream about it. Nor, quick, let's write the business plan. Nor, let's put a pitch deck together. Or do you know anyone to get us on Shark Tank? Or no, you immediately, your mind goes to, how can I collide this idea with reality? And so we didn't wait. We just turned our car around in mid-commute and drove back into town and tried to buy a DVD. Of course, none available. It's in test market, and certainly not in our small town. So settle on a music CD. Figure, same form factor, same weight.
Yeah.
And buy a little gift envelope, like you put a greeting card in, and we mailed a used music CD to Reed's house, and learned in that quick experiment that took place 2 hours after the idea popped into our head, that in fact it was a good idea.
Yeah, but I read, but the way you wrote it was really interesting. I don't know if I want to call this the hand of God. I often say there's something out there that pushes us along sometimes, because you wrote something I thought interesting. If that CD came back damaged, there may be no Netflix. Well, and it didn't come back damaged, because it's, from what I was reading, it's like because of the postal system you had in the little town there kind of worked well, but it could have been some other postal system. So I busted it in half. It shows up at Reed's house in half, and you would have been like, "That's a dumb idea." That's kind of what it, right? I
Oh,
sense something.
it's completely right. It was in some ways a false positive because, this is not, we didn't have the idea to do video rental by mail because either of us were movie buffs and knew all about it. It wasn't like both of us had spent 20 years in the video rental industry and knew exactly how the mechanics of video rental work. And it certainly isn't like we had a lot of experience in the depths of the post office. I mean, I did have a lot of experience in the mail order business, but always shipping with UPS and
Yeah.
FedEx and DHL, and I'd never really understood how things moved throughout the post office. Now, the answer is correct that by dropping it in a local post box and having the test be it moving from the local post office to a local address, it avoided all those super high speed, high pressure, tight corner mail handling equipment that could have very easily have mangled that CD. And if it had, we'd be on, well,
Another
probably
idea.
wouldn't be talking about this. Or if we were, we'd be talking about personalized shampoo or custom dog food. So yeah, it could have been a false positive. And, you call it the hand of God. That the official movie term is the Deus ex machina.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay.
It sounds way more erudite.
It does.
When
It
you
does
do it in
very
Latin.
cool. That's a better way. Next time I'm going to use that phrase. So
Yeah, but it is that the Deus ex
it's like
machina in the
yeah, of
movies
course.
is you go, oh, okay, we've got the heroes. They're at the end of a box canyon. They're surrounded by enemies. There's no apparent way out. How are we going to do this one? And you go, I know. And then we'll have a flying giant condor come in and pluck them away to safety. And yet what it really speaks to is the degree that is luck.
Luck.
In
Right.
this.
Or and I think it's luck probably in perseverance, because I said that there's an assumption, like I brought from the book when you kind of agreed, like maybe you would have went off and tried to make the shampoo thing, but you may have also You may have also persisted and said, you know what, it came back broken, but I'm not quitting now, right? There's something, because usually it comes back broken.
Okay.
There's a high probability it would have came back broken for most people, and there's no, nothing out there for you.
I would have abandoned it right then. I wouldn't have been persistent on that if it.
You don't think so?
Absolutely not.
But sometimes you may have, no? Or do you think it's got right? Sometimes you may try, something else.
I might have tried something. I might have tried some other way to do video rental by mail because I had that problem. The problem was that video rental sucked. It was a deeply dissatisfying experience that the big competitor, Blockbuster, had the core tenet of its business model, something called managed dissatisfaction. And so when you stumble on a problem like that, $8 billion industry where the $6 billion leader is hated and reviled and unsaid, that's a problem. So yes, I may have tried some different approach.
Right.
I wouldn't have kept persevering on using DVDs to do it, because I would have said that was a quick, easy, and cheap experiment. It demonstrated that idea was not, in fact, the one that was going to pay for my kids' education, but it was, in fact, a stupid idea after all. On to the next one.
Right. So I wanted to touch upon one day Reed comes to you and says, because you're CEO and Reed's an investor, and he owns 70% and you own 30%. And I guess he comes to you one day and says, you can't be CEO anymore, right? That's like, you're not, you just don't have what it takes. This is what I'm reading. And some entrepreneurs are faced with that. We've all been faced with that. You know what I'm saying? There are times where I was faced with it and I persevered through it. But what was that like? And what we talk about, this name of the show is Over the Wall. And that, I don't know if you faced a wall at that time emotionally, but that's a big change.
Yes, and to really understand how I'm going to answer that question, you kind of have to know a little bit about the relationship that Reed and I had. And in many ways, it was founded on, well, obviously mutual respect, because both of us had completely different skill sets. I am so much, as we've talked about, much more of a marketing outwardly facing, empathetic personality, idea driven. And Reed is the opposite. You know, he's an engineer, he's a mathematician by education and training. He's an engineer, extremely rational, extremely logical. And the combination of that, the two of us recognized we both filled parts of each other that were missing. So it was this really great partnership. But the other thing that was there was that Reed and I just coincidentally shared this trait of belief in radical honesty, which is that life is so short. There's no time for shading the truth. There's no time for avoiding hurting someone's, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And so you deliver news in a more sugar-coated way. And that, I don't know where that came from for me or where it came from Reed, but we immediately recognized that we were two people who felt that way and could have these extremely honest conversations with each other about everything, and that nothing got taken personally. It was entirely in the interest of solving the problem, of getting to the elegance that was the self-evidently right way to proceed. So when Reed, one evening on his way home from work, popped his head in the office and goes, you know, Marc, we've got to talk. I figured this was not, we have to talk. It was, we got to talk. We've all had people say that to us, and it usually does not end well. And Reed actually walked in and he had his notebook computer with him, and he flips it open and then proceeds to walk me through a slideshow of a PowerPoint presentation of all the areas where he's concerned about my judgment, concerned about my leadership, concerned about my ability to hire. And at one point I go, Reed, I'm laughing now, but then I go, Reed, I was getting mad. I go, Reed, I am not going to sit here and let you pitch me on how I suck. And he goes, sits back and goes, okay, closes the computer. And because of the relationship I had with Reed, because it was founded on this radical honesty, I had to take what he was saying seriously. There was no ulterior motive. He was genuinely concerned. And his concern was that, listen, if we see smoke at this size, there's going to be fire later on. And you mentioned that there was a dynamic here that, you know, because of Reed's role as my investor, he did control more stock than I did. And I thought at first he was firing me. But as he continued to talk, and he was pointing things that he felt that I was doing well too. So this was not all bad news. But what I realized is he was not firing me. He was actually saying something very differently. He was saying that if we really wanted to give Netflix the very, very best possible chance at success, he should join the company. He should come in full time, and that he should come in as CEO, and that I should move over, and that we should run the company together. And that's really hard. And people who've heard that before, it's a really hard thing to say, because when you're an entrepreneur, you usually have this dream and you envision you running this big successful company. And that's part of what drives you to keep going. But in reality, those are two separate dreams. There's the dream of the big successful company, and there's the dream of you running it. And unfortunately, that dream of the big successful company isn't just your dream anymore. It's the dream of certainly your investors. It's the dream of your employees. To some degree, it's the dream of your customers who have come to rely on the service you provide. And that night after Reed left, and I sat in the office for hours just thinking, and then went home and sat on the porch, my porch right down below here, with my wife and a bottle of wine, and talked through it. It was hard to argue with what Reed was saying, that the company would be stronger with both of us running it together. And if I really wanted a big successful company, it was kind of my responsibility, yes, to myself, but also to my employees and to my investors and to my customers, that I do everything I possibly could to make that happen, even if that meant that I had to step away from my dream of being the person who was solely running it. And I'm not saying that, the next morning I woke up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and rushed to the office and go, let's go. It takes a long time, and you continually get these little tweaks, reminders of that things are different now. And this is in all sincerity, if I look back at all the decisions that I had to make at Netflix, and there was thousands of them, probably the best decision, certainly the most important, and certainly the most significant decision was that one, that I was going to let Reed come in, join the company. We would run the company together. And in many ways, those next several years, while we ran the company together, that was the Renaissance. So many of the evolutions in our business model, so many of the evolutions in our technology, so many of the culture, um, all of that came from those next few years when Reed and I ran this together. And then certainly, my God, if you look at where Reed has taken the company since I left, it'd be very, very hard to argue that he wasn't the uniquely right person to run that company. And I coach entrepreneurs all the time. As I mentioned on the podcast,
Yeah.
I walk people through the exercise of how do you quickly and easily test things. But a lot of people struggle, like you said, with this, which is, am I the right person?
Right.
You should be constantly looking at every employee of yours and saying, are they the right person for the scale of the company, for what they're responsible for accomplishing? And it's just honesty to apply that exact same filter to yourself.
I have this thing. I have this trick I do. I've had about 5 management teams in 25 years. So because the revenue just grows, and you want to keep people around. And I find the hardest thing is that because you hired people, there's an emotional attachment. And so what happens is I think a lot of people leave people around, even though there's a lot of fires, and a lot of smoke that's about to become a fire. And a lot of that is this emotional thing that I hired these people. I hired this person, let's say. So I have this trick I do is like I fire myself mentally and on a Friday, and I come on to work on Monday with a strategy in mind, like what are we going after? And I clear my head that I know anybody. And I actually change my leadership meeting. Let's say it's a Monday leadership meeting and I've got my team. And now I actually enter with like, I don't know anybody here. And I'm like, let's hear them out. Let's hear what they're talking about. And it's allowed me to just divorce myself from the fact that I know anybody in the room. Like, because normally the board would fire me when I can't, and then they would bring someone else in to do the same job I'm about to do on this Monday, right? They'd say, go figure out what's going on here. Here's our strategy. You figure it out. The last guy couldn't do it. So it's kind of a mental trick, but it's a hard thing to do because there's emotional attachment to people.
Yeah, that's a fascinating way of kind of ensuring you're constantly asking yourself, are these the right people and the right roles? Um, I really like that, actually. But of course, as you're alluding to, it doesn't, unless you're completely able to wipe your mind blank about your relationship with the person, it does not make it any easier to sit down with someone who,
No.
especially at the beginning, quit a higher paying job with greater benefits, work tirelessly helping you make your dream come true, and is not scaling. And you have to sit down with them and say, you're not the right person for the next phase of this, of our journey. That's the hardest thing that any entrepreneur ever has to do, I think. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's the irony that if the more successful the company is, the more you have to deliver really, really bad news to people.
Right.
Um, um, and it's interesting that it's clearly a very different scenario. You scaled.
Yeah.
You're still running the company you started 25 years ago, and that's extremely rare. I'm going to add you to my list of people who
Thanks.
do that, which is, it's a handful of entrepreneurs who are really, really good at that very early stage where there is no repeatable, scalable business model, and you're looking for it, and then you find it, and then as you move through those stages of growth, the management challenges are different, the communication's different, the culture is different. It's brutal, and to be good at one, and I am not. I'm terrible. I could never run a big company. I don't. Those skills are completely alien to me, which is, but again, I'm extremely lucky. I figured out early on what I'm good at and what I like, and I get to do that all the time.
But
And there's
you
another thing. I'll tell you one thing, Rob. I mean, one
okay.
thing I'm going, it's pretty cool that you managed to do this for all this time, but there's a thing that you're missing. And I imagine, I don't know whether you think about it or not, but you lack the pattern recognition of having seen yourself do it multiple times,
Right.
successfully and unsuccessfully. And so there's pros and others. I go, gosh, the things that I've learned because of the fact that I've done 7 startups, and believe me, not most of them are not hugely successful, but one of the reasons I wrote the book is because I did it 16 years after I left Netflix, and only then can you look back and go, to what degree were some of the things I did because of luck successful, or luck successful in spite of me? What did I actually do well and not do well? And wow, it helped a lot that I've had multiple companies to see and learn what things actually are. I was just in the right place at the right time, or no, that is the right approach to go after something.
So so in 2000, I think it's 2002, or when you leave, you exit
2003.
2003, you exit Netflix.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
like,
Like I mentioned, it's listen, but by then we had our IPO in 2002.
yeah,
And the book reveals all the ups and downs it took to get to that point.
I
But
know.
all of a sudden, you have money in
I,
the
I
bank.
love how, by the way, you do this. Why, by the way, read this book. He like breaks it up by time. We launch at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. Like
Yeah.
it's really, you show like the ugliness of the, yeah.
It's a journey. It's the book. The subtitle is the crazy life of the idea, but
Yeah.
it's because ideas, who the hell knows where they're going to go. But we get to this point. It's 2002. We have the IPO. All of a sudden, we have money in the bank. We have an ability to raise money. We're able to hire these unbelievably talented people, and so I'm here, and the company's bigger now, and I, of course, love the company. I mean, I love it like a child. It's my baby. But I didn't really love what I was doing. I was doing bigger company stuff. And then here's the real thing, is that I wasn't very good at it. There was people who were way better at it than I was. And it was this really kind of interesting insight for me about, I'll get heavy on you, Rob.
Yeah.
It's like the meaning of success, really, which is, if I'm coming to work doing something that I don't really enjoy, and I'm doing something I'm not particularly good at, is, yeah, the company's successful, and yeah, I made money on it, but is that success? No. Success is getting a chance to do the things that you enjoy and you're good at. And for me, I discovered a long time ago that that's doing startups, doing early stage companies, sitting around the table with the really smart people solving these really interesting puzzles. And that if I was truly going to be successful, I should be doing that. And it took a year. The realization took place 6 months before the IPO that this was the chance I think I would take to get out. And it
Wow.
took about a year to transition all my responsibility, to do so in a way that didn't disrupt anything, didn't want to hurt my child. And I'm the luckiest, happiest guy you'll talk to in a long
What was
time.
it like though? I often, obviously, one day I'm not. You can't run a company forever. I mean, I'm still young and I've got a lot of energy, and I'm, I still see a lot of big things. But when you went out the door that day and you got in your car, what was it like?
So, this in Silicon Valley, tons of people have enough money that they never need to work a day in their life, and their kids never need to work another day in their life. And a lot of these people are my friends. And you see that, lo and behold, that not all of them end up lying on a beach or playing golf all day. I would guess the informal Marc Randolph surveys show that probably 75%, 80% go back to work. And they go back to work because that is what makes them whole. It's not the money. It's not the success. It's not even the scorecard everyone talks about. It's that they love that building companies. And so we do one, what am I going to do? Stop doing the thing that I love and that I'm good at? No, I'm going to do it again. So I did not have this hubris to think that I suspect that I was part of the 20%. I go, I have a huge amount of interests. I'm one of those guys who gets into something and goes
Yeah.
deep in it. And whether it's, it's language or art or coffee or what, I got a million of them. I go, I'm going to pursue a lot of these other things. But I did not have the hubris to think, oh, I know. And so for those first 6 months, it was not I'm retiring. It's not I'm stopping working. It was I'm just going to take some time off, and left it wide open. And what happened is it was great. My wife and I joke that I left a voicemail, something that the answering machine on my voicemail, it was something like, hi, I'm Mark, I'm out of the office right now, and I'm not sure when I'll be back. And that was it. And she goes, it was perfect. That lasts forever. But of course, as each succeeding month went by, it became more obvious to me that I had made the right decision. And in the end, the last 16 years, I've now realized that I need the entrepreneurial fix. I could as easily stop being an entrepreneur as I could stop breathing, meaning I could do it for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. But I did not want to start another company. I didn't want that, as you know, that 7 by 24, maybe not working 7/24, but worrying 7/24.
Yeah.
And I needed to find some way to get my methadone for this startup addiction. And for me, it started off as mentoring other early stage entrepreneurs, getting a chance to still sit down with a team, sit around the table, work through these really interesting puzzles. But then I get to go home at 5, and then they can stay up all night worrying about how they're actually going to get this thing accomplished. And that was, and then where that transitioned into, and here comes the shameless plugs part of it, is that I was immodestly, profoundly, I think, changing the lives of these entrepreneurs I was working with. But I could do 8 at a time, 6 at a time. I mean, 6 people, so 3 or 4 companies maybe, because I would go in deep. I'd learn the product, I'd learn the team. I became that person who CEOs don't have, which is the person who doesn't have an axe to grind, but yet understands enough about the problem to truly be helpful. But I wasn't impacting enough people. And so I then said, okay, my new company really is, how do I do mentorship at scale? And that's kind of what you see. Over my shoulder is one chance of doing that. My public speaking is a shot. The podcast is a big chance where I'm not doing what you do. I don't speak to people who've done this successfully. I'm talking to people who are
just starting. Yeah, I was listening to it. It's like there was an AI company I was listening to who does the gaming AI company, and I thought it was really great. I think it's such a gift. First of all, once again, that will never work. It's a podcast, it's a book, but it's such a gift that you're giving back as to entrepreneurs. By the way, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, is there a way? Obviously, you're on social channels and everything, but if they wanted to say, can you just help mentor me, and whether you can or can't, I kind of always have an open door. I say, about that. Can they get to you somewhere? How can they get to you?
I am the exact same way. I mean, I don't want to be this brand. I'm a real person.
Yeah.
And yes, so there's a couple ways. Certainly, I do interview real entrepreneurs on That Will Never Work podcast. And there is a way you can have a website, which is marcrandolph.com. That's Marc with a C, Randolph with a PH. And there is a way to apply to be mentored on the podcast. I do a clubhouse where I do live mentoring every Tuesday at 5:00 Pacific, where I actually take people from the audience in Clubhouse and do a session.
I'd love to do that. If you ever want to, I'm not trying to bum rush your Clubhouse, but if you ever want someone to just come in and I'll tag team it with you for an hour or something, I would happy to do it.
We should try that, because I am actively saying I'd love to have someone to help. Because the thing is, I have some perspective, but listen, like I said before, that pattern recognition is a big one, and you want people who approach problems from different ways. So that could be really, really fun.
That's great.
But there's also from the website you can find out if you don't have the attention span for a 300-page book or a 30-minute podcast, I slice it and dice it up, and
Yeah,
a TikTok, Instagram, YouTube,
exactly.
Twitter, you name it.
So
Whatever size you want, I'll
you'll give it
dispense
a call.
wisdom to fit your attention span.
Well, my last question, we're at the top of the hour. My last question to you is, and once again, I think the book you just touch upon. If you got to read the book. I always tell it. There's some books I read, like, and I just there's this book is just it's really great for especially that process at the beginning, the messiness of it, and you kind of really dissect it. But my last question to you is like, if you could give that one piece of advice to an entrepreneur what would you give them? What would you give her?
Stop thinking and start doing. For a bunch of reasons. One, having the idea in your head is useless. Great. You have dreamed up this idea and you have built it. It's an innate castle in your mind. And then when someone actually does it, you go, oh, that's not fair. I had that idea 3 years ago. Well, yeah, they did something about it and you didn't. But the other thing, which is that we talked at the very beginning of our conversation about the nature versus nurture of entrepreneurship. To what degree are you born with it? To what degree do you develop that skill? And the way you develop that skill is by doing it. It is like it's like golf. You don't learn to play golf by watching a video. You go out by hitting golf balls. And the same thing for entrepreneurial skills. I could never have launched Netflix at the beginning, but it was my 6th company, and I learned a ton about hiring people, about how do you do this quick validation of ideas, about how do you get the predisposition to action by starting at a much smaller scale. So what's that? I don't know, it's some stupid expression. Best time to plant a tree was, 30 years ago. Second best time is now. So if you have an idea, get it out of your head now. Build something, test something, make something, do something. Start that process of figuring out if your idea is a good idea. Start the process of learning what are the steps you go through it. Don't quit your day job. Don't borrow money against your mortgage. Do it on the side. Start the process. You asked for a quick answer. I can't give a quick answer.
No, that was good. I mean, I sort of say it's the unit of one. Even today with my teams, as we're building new products all the time, I said, get one person to use it. Yeah. Don't think about, I said, just get one, like you were saying, I said, just get one person. If one person buys on it, we got that's enough to move forward to the next step. But I said unit of one, sometimes you get caught in, like you said, the scale of things. I'm going to make an app. I got 1,000 people. Like, just get someone to walk in and buy your clothing in your dorm room. Like, it's one person, just one person to spend money. If somebody's going to spend money on your idea, it's a huge validation, right?
I love that way of expressing it. It's cleaner than a lot of the other ways that I think the same way. You begin developing personas where you say, let's pick one ideal customer and describe them in tremendous detail. What's their name? How old are they? Where do they live? What are their hobbies? Because you're rather than picturing this broad market of everybody, and you build something which is completely amorphous. Focus on that one person. Yeah. It's a really, really powerful way. The other one I've said sometimes is you define a market by its center, not by its edges. You say, what is the quintessential ingredient to that market, rather than who's in and who's out, because otherwise you end up with this weird map of Bosnia or something like that. Anyway, but your way is much better. Go for one.
Well, first I want to thank you for being on the podcast and for what you've given the world. Obviously, Netflix allowed us to get out of DVDs, and we started with the blockbuster stuff, but I just think you create something that very few people in the world are able to impact the world on the level you did from an idea. And I think for the world's sake, just from an entrepreneurial perspective, thank you. And then to take that and say, instead of taking my riches and I'm going to play golf and do stuff, you've now poured yourself into passing it forward. And the book, that will never work, your podcast. I just think a lot of people don't do that. And you decide you're going to take your precious time and do that. And that's a gift to you, to entrepreneurs. So I just want to thank you for all that and for being on the show.
My pleasure, Robin. And we share that characteristic of that. Once you've kind of experienced the incredible, fulfilling aspects of building your own companies, you kind of want to give everyone else that shot. And so I know that you share that exact same sentiment. And so we'll fight the good fight together. Just get
We-
everyone to try
We will.
something.
Exactly. Stay safe and good luck.
And maybe we'll do something together soon, Rob. That
I know.
sounds
I'll get on that. I'll get in Clubhouse. So.
all right. Thanks much.